Logan Hamilton, Janine Weeks, and Paul Skeeney. They're in the other rooms. Can you make your way to the hearing room? Yeah, thank you.
Where are you going to start?
Sure. Mr. Chair, Chair Demro, Chairman Holby, Lord Tatnick of the Oregon School Board Association. I put on OLIS, Jan put on OLIS for me. Impacts of minimum wage school districts. LFO had asked us, what are the impacts at 1350? And we surveyed our districts to try to find out personnel program impacts. And that on OLIS calls that out. To highlight a couple, I think Mr. Brawley commented about compounding. We call it indexing because if someone gets a raise that go up on this pay scale 2 steps, the person that's right there sitting above them is going to want a 2-step. So we have some collective bargaining concerns from districts that they've talked about. Programs, one that we know will be impacted is the free and reduced lunch. Last session, the legislature picked up the tab on the reduced side, so those folks paying for lunch on a reduced rate would get it for free. With wage increases, those programs operate at a zero-sum game and sometimes already have to be subsidized. With an increase, those programs, the price will have to be moved on down to the student or cut workers. And I just wanted to highlight a few of those. I am in the building and people can talk to me about that if they'd like, if they take a look at that. Hearing the governor's proposal, a little different snapshot of time now that we need to consider. I just appreciate you guys taking a look at it. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jamie Partridge. I'm one of the chief petitioners on the ballot initiative to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour over 3 years. And I'm with Oregonians for 15. This is the basic message that we're bringing. We want the legislature to pass a $15 minimum wage, or we're going to the ballot. I won't go into why workers need a $15 minimum wage. I think a number of folks have already testified about the difficulties of living under $15 an hour across the state of Oregon. We're not in favor of the governor's proposal, which leaves out a whole sector of the workforce at 1350, and the 6-year phase-in is much too long. Plus, it doesn't lift the action which is necessary for such places like Portland, which actually need to go above 15. So no worker deserves to live in poverty, not in Portland, not in Eugene, not in Bedford, not in Coos Bay, not in Bend, not in LeGrand, not in Ontario, no worker. And we're not here to beg or negotiate. We're just here basically to tell the legislature, to tell the public, to tell our allies, to tell our opponents that there's 2 choices here: $15 or the ballot. We know what workers need to get out of poverty. We know it'll be good for the economy. We know it'll be good for business. We know it'll be good for the taxpayers. $1.7 billion saved in safety net costs if workers are brought off of those programs. That's taxpayer savings. And of course, we know that the studies show that $15 is what workers need in the state. And it would be good if the legislature were with us, but it doesn't really matter because we have direct democracy in the state. We have the opportunity to go to the ballot. We have over 20,000 signatures. We'll have 40,000 by the time we get to the legislative session. We'll have 60,000 after the legislative session. We're on our way to 88,000 signatures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Yes, my name is Pete Iverson, and I'm also part of Oregonians for 15. I work with homeless people at 2 different agencies in the city, and I make less than $15 an hour. Portland City Council has declared a housing state of emergency, and they were right to do that. I've seen firsthand how waves of predatory, no-cause evictions and rent hikes are overwhelming social services capacity to keep up. I've seen firsthand the traumatizing effects that this is having on our communities, and I myself experienced a no-cause eviction 1 year ago. Hundreds of thousands of working Oregonians make less than $15 per hour, and women and people of color are particularly likely to be in that group. As low-wage workers, many of us live one bad break away from displacement, homelessness, or both. And in this way, the Fight for 15 is a very simple demand, but it has an impact that reaches well beyond the numbers that appear on our paychecks, and it carries a diversity of struggles with it in its heart. We literally cannot afford to wait until 2022, as Governor Brown just proposed. We literally cannot afford to settle for a smaller number, as is shown in multiple recent studies. And we are told that our immediate urgent needs have to be measured by the standards of the people who profit by paying us poverty wages. We have been accused of starting a civil war for organizing a ballot initiative, which is well within our rights to do, and the only reason we need to do this is due to an inadequate, an unsuccessful, and an obstructionist legislative process. There is a term for this, it is called victim blaming. Now, some of you have expressed support for raising the minimum wage, and we appreciate that, but actions speak louder than words. We have been quite clear that only a statewide $15 minimum wage phased in over no longer than 3 years, and a repeal of the local preemption is enough to prevent us from moving to the ballot. If we do this, have this so-called civil war in November, it will be because your actions have fallen short of what is necessary.
Yes, thank you. My name is Eric Gross, and I'm with Oregonians for 15 as well. I am actually a four-year graduate with a degree in economics from the University of Oregon. And so you might be surprised to hear that I am a low-wage worker at a Kmart in the Dalles, based on the structure of our economy and what's happening in small towns. Despite working there for 4 or 5 years, I still make only 10 cents above the minimum wage. I've known people who've worked there for a year or more who have similar education to me. And fortunately, I happen to have subsidized housing because my mom used to be a low-wage worker as well. But my best friend Jimmy, he's struggling to put food on the table, and he's in a housing crisis right now, even though he's a professional lifelong cook with 20 years of experience because he's paid only $10 to $12 an hour. In my life, visiting my mom in the nursing home, and when I go shopping, I see the faces of these lowly paid workers. They're some of the hardest working individuals in our economy, and yet they're dependent on government assistance to make ends meet. It's time to stop thinking of them as undeserving or somehow that they deserve what they're getting. It's simply not the case. Now, we've raised the minimum wage before. At the federal level in 1949, we nearly doubled it. And we nearly raised it by 50% in Oregon in the 80s and again in the 1990s. It didn't have the kind of destructive job losses that the critics are saying now that it would. Most low-wage workers today are not teenagers. They're over the age of 21, they're raising families, they're skilled and talented. We need to reward a hard day's work honestly, and in this day and age, that means $15 an hour or the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks all for listening.
Thank you. Up next, I have Ronald Barini, Logan Hamilton, Janine Weeks, Paul Skeen.
As they're coming up on deck, we have Alicia Cochran, Peter Emerson, Bob Hollander, and Tyler McGinnis.
Mr. Chair, committee members, my name is Ron Verini. I'm the mayor of Ontario, and we just traveled 7 hours to come here, 30 or 40 of us, in buses and caravans. Malheur County is unique within the state of Oregon. We do not have the pleasure of industry of any great volume. And we don't certainly have the demographics of Western Oregon. We sit on the border of a state that has a minimum wage of $7.25. We are poor, we are struggling, we have the highest unemployment rate of any of the communities next to us. The communication that I'm receiving in my office from businesses that are in town and in Malheur County are those that are attempting to attract, and what we are trying to keep, are coming to me with proposals of automation in the case of onions and of course potatoes, or move their operation 1 mile away to Idaho to counteract an increase in this minimum wage. I'm not asking you to not increase the minimum wage for communities that have the ability to absorb this. Eastern Oregon does not have that luxury, let alone the jobs. Please, carve us out of this proposal. We are a poor county competing in the world trying to attract jobs, and we are not going to be able to do that if you tie our hands and force us to accept a minimum wage that will devastate most in our area and help only a few. I beg you to develop a plan that gives each community the capability of controlling their own destiny.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Chairmen and committee members, thank you for listening to both sides. My name is Logan Hamilton. I own a business in Oregon. We have grocery stores. It was founded by myself and my wife. We have 2 stores in Idaho. We have 3 stores in Oregon. We're in 3 different cities and 2 different counties. This is devastating for our business. We would have to close one of our Oregon stores. It would be a sacrifice of 30 to 40 jobs. We would have to look to cut wages or cut help in the other 2 Oregon stores to survive. I sit with my employees. I understand the tough part of making a living, a single mother. I was raised by a divorced parent, a single mother. My mom was on food stamps. I remember going to the school line and living on school lunches and getting subsidy. I started my minimum wage job, and I worked, and I worked, and I put myself in a position to own my own company. 3 of my managers out of the 5 have started with our company at minimum wage job and worked us up to be store managers and pulled us out of that. I sit down, we raised wages across the board last year with our Oregon stores, not just because of the minimum wage. We sit and raised with each employees and managers. And I sit with our employees now and feel their pain and ask, how can we get better? I'm an independent grocer. I compete against the big box stores. I can't just raise my prices. But I don't want to have the conversation of having to close stores and go to Idaho, because that's where I have to survive my business. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate people's pain out there to live off of. This is a tough decision.
Chair Holby, Chair Dumbro, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Janine Weeks. I'm superintendent of Nissa School District, the eastern border of which is the Snake River and Idaho. I'm here today to convey to you 3 ways in which an increase in the minimum wage could impact the Nissa community. First of all, in the school district itself, we experienced an increase of $480,000 in state school fund from last year to this. Just due to the necessities that needed to be covered by those funds, our implementation of full-day kindergarten, that cost us $200,000 for 2 additional teachers. We also had an increase of 2% in salaries for all staff, including our hourly staff, of $212,000. So that took care of the majority of that increase in funding. Here are the projected costs of an increase in a minimum wage. Cost to increase only those staff currently below, let's say, $13.50, for example, is $122,000. That creates a problem because the individual whose salary was just raised to a new minimum is now making more than an individual who's been working in the district for 11 years. So if we change that and increase the lowest hourly rate to $13.50 and all other salaries proportionately, that cost is $484,000. If we raise the hourly rate to $15 for all salaries proportionately, that cost is $704,000. With that in mind, it seems like cutting jobs is the likely outcome. Approximately 1/4 of Nissa students are identified as migratory students, which means they move frequently as their parents look for work in agriculture. The impact of losing those students because of the changes that have been expressed by other members in the community would be catastrophic for our district. So while it's understandable that those individuals should have increases in wages, we ask you to consider the additional costs. Thank you.
Representative Dumbrow, and, no, Senator Dumbrow, and I'm not good at this, and Representative Bowlby. I've sent all of you information. My name is Paul Skeen. I farm in Nissa. I'm the president of the Malheur County Onion Growers Association. Malheur County is the #1 growing onion county in the United States. We grow 11,000 acres. Produces about $240 million in that little community. And for your information, it serves for everybody that's eating about 37 million people eating onions. Of course, I've traveled here a long ways too. I guess I want to speak from the heart with this. There's a line in between our valley. It's called the Snake River. 7 1/4 on one side, 9 1/4 on the other. Idaho, Eastern Oregon Onion Association that sells, we're the largest onion growing area when you take Idaho into it in the United States. I have to compete against Idaho at 7 1/4. You raise it to 15, you're going to lower our housing, you're going to lower our land values, you're going to kill us over there. And the governor said, housing is expensive. I got a beautiful brick home on one of my farms, $850 a month, 4-bedroom, 3-bath house. This isn't Portland. This is out in the middle of nowhere. Sorry to say it, but I love it and I've been there my whole life. I'm an Oregonian. Protect us. Do what State Representative Vince said. Carve us out and save our jobs. You're going to ruin us if you don't. Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have Monisha Cochran, Peter Emerson, Bob Hollander, and Tyler McKinnon.
And on deck, I have Vicki Hines, Robert Brady, Malicio Lopez, and Andrew Hill.
Thank you, Chairs Denbrough and Hovey and members of the committee. My name is Alicia Cochran and I'm here tonight to testify in support of raising the minimum wage in Oregon. I'm a student, part-time student worker at Portland Community College. I am paid $9.75 an hour. My partner works full-time as a community health worker, making slightly more than minimum wage. She has limited health insurance through her employer and often forgoes proper medical attention because she can't afford the copay. Our son Michael is in college and his tuition is paid for by grants. All our extra resources go to support him at school. Our money doesn't stretch enough to eat as healthy as we would like. As a result of living off of cheaper food filled with additives, my partner has been diagnosed as pre-diabetic. We are renting my sister's home for $750 a month in inner Northeast Portland. We are incredibly blessed to have a home. Unfortunately, we do not have enough money to pay for repairs on our house. The heater broke 2 years ago. We couldn't afford to fix it. So we started using our stove to heat our home. And the heater bar in the bottom of the oven snapped in half, and now we can't even bake our food. We're currently using portable heaters, which not only increase our light bill, but are dangerous to use long term. Our son is in college. Like I said, he gets financial aid. He goes to school in Lee, California. Oftentimes we have to do a GoFundMe campaign to raise money to send him stuff that he needs. We have no savings. We have relied on utility assistance programs in the past, and we depend on the kindness of others to make ends meet. An increase in the minimum wage will help lift our family out of poverty. We need the Oregon legislature to raise the wage this session. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
I love the t-shirt.
Thank you.
Hello, Chair Denbrough and Hovey and committee members. My name is Peter Emerson, and I'm the owner of the Bipartisan Cafe in Portland and a proud member of the Main Street Alliance of Oregon. I and the Main Street Alliance of Oregon support increasing Oregon's minimum wage to $13.50 or higher. 10 years ago, I opened a bipartisan cafe with the mission of creating a neighborhood coffee shop where community members can congregate and share ideas. We believe very strongly in the residents and customers, the small businesses and schools, the events and associations that all conspire to build a community out of this neighborhood. Right now, we employ 25 people. Our starting wage is minimum wage, which increases shortly after a brief period. We serve coffee, sandwiches, soup, homemade baked goods, and really good homemade pie. There are hundreds of minimum wage workers who live within walking distance of my cafe. If they can't afford to come into my cafe and buy a slice of pie and a cup of coffee, those are hundreds of customers that I just don't have. I know that when my employees and my customers can't afford the basics like food, rent, and childcare, it hurts us all. If my employees' life is so stressful, it shows in their work. If they have to have a second job, then I have less flexibility in covering sick days. The service industry has one of the highest turnover rates of any industry, which is very costly. When my employees are paid well enough to afford necessities such as transportation, health, and housing, their attendance and performance at work improves. Increased productivity and reduced turnover can save business owners like me money and more than offset costs associated with raising wages. When I hear other business owners talking about how raising minimum wage will hurt their businesses, I ask them, who are your customers? In my community, it's not CEOs of big companies. It's people who live and work in my neighborhood who will directly benefit if they have more money to spend. At the end of the day, raising the minimum wage in Oregon is the right thing to do for businesses and for our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bob Hollander, and before I get started, I just wanted to say I really appreciate all of you helping make our democracy work. So good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I come from Pleasant Hill, Oregon, just south of Eugene, and I'm here to support the minimum wage, raising it, that is. Professionally, I've been a retirement planner and investment advisor for the past 22 years, having my own business, and I just retired last year. Most of my 350 clients were blue-collar workers. They worked hard, but it was hard to save. Let me tell you about one of my clients. I'll call her Sophie. She was an office clerk who worked at a local sawmill and had no retirement plan, even though she was 50 years old when I started work there. She was not covered by a union. The mill had no retirement plan because the mill was too small. Sophie's wages were minimal because she had worked at other mills that had closed and was then bounced from minimum wage job to minimum wage job. She naturally was barely able to save any money and put anything into her IRA. But she did so because she was a hard worker and frugal and was able to save $2,000 a year. But as you can imagine, when it was time to retire, it was not enough. Prior to being an investment advisor, I taught school, high school and middle school for 13 years. And there were students I had whose families struggled with jobs that did not pay a decent wage. I had a student whose name was Jake, and made home visits to his home and found that it was in total disarray, and I won't even describe it, you can just imagine. When the parents weren't at work and at their minimum wage jobs, the family stressors were all consuming. Mom and Dad did not have time or the means to engage and guide their high-needs students.
Thank you.
Jake and students like him ultimately got lost in trouble with school and the law, and it cost our state money.
Thank you.
So I urge you, and just 2 more sentences.
A lot of people. If everybody did that, we wouldn't get through this. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you for making it clear.
Thank you.
It's in the written testimony I submitted.
No, you can stay there.
Oh,
Good evening, Chair Dembro, Chair Holby, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tyler McInnes, and I'm a policy analyst with the Oregon Center for Public Policy. We're here tonight to discuss facts, and throughout the course of the evening, you may hear a number of claims, but I urge you to stick to the facts. The facts show that Oregon's low-wage workers need a raise, and that you can give them one. Between 2007 and 2014, the share of Oregon families with children living in poverty, despite having at least one family working at least part-time, grew by nearly 28%. And since the end of the Great Recession, Oregon has seen the second highest spike in food insecurity in the nation, trailing only Louisiana. These are sobering and unacceptable facts. But there are also facts about the minimum wage I urge you to consider tonight. For one, we know that significantly increasing the minimum wage would positively benefit hundreds of thousands of low-wage workers here in Oregon. And we know there's precedent for significantly increasing the wage here. In 1989, the legislature increased the minimum wage 42% over 2 years. Raising the minimum wage to $13.50 over 2 years would increase the state's wage floor by 46%. We know that Oregon's small businesses and small business jobs have grown statewide following past minimum wage increases. And the research tells us that minimum wage increases do not have a discernible impact on job growth. And in the record, you should see a study I submitted, was released recently from Cornell University's School of Hospitality that shows that increases in the minimum wage have not negatively affected job growth in the restaurant industry. And finally, we know that raising the minimum wage is a net positive for the majority of workers affected. Where there are problems in certain public benefits programs, the legislature ought to correct those. Those are problem areas for workers today who are offered more hours or better pay at their job, regardless of what action you take on minimum wage. And so in conclusion, the facts show that Oregon's low-wage workers need a raise and you can give them one. I urge the Legislative Assembly in the upcoming session to give Oregon workers the raise they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Up next, Ricky Hines, Robert Brady, Malicio Lopez, and Andrew Hill.
Tonight next we'll have Martha Rodriguez, Laura Rondo, Joy Willman, and Tim Cowan.
Thank you, Chair Dumbro and Chair Colby and representatives. This is new for us. My name is Vicki Hines. I am from Ontario, Oregon. My husband and I own a business called Jokes and Juice, a coffee company that we started back in 2001, just before 9/11 happened. First, I want to say that the way we look at this issue, we've been told that it really doesn't matter pretty much what we think, because there are enough votes to go ahead and pass this minimum wage. What I will tell you is this will be devastating to our community, our business, other people's businesses. We made a commitment when we started our business to take care of our employees, and that meant do whatever we needed to do. If that meant that we got by with a very minimum amount to pay our employees, especially when 2008 happened, that's exactly what we did. We've been very fortunate and been able to grow our business. We now have in Ontario 22 employees. That doesn't include our brewer and our baker, which we are also able to expand into. But I will tell you, there is no new business that has come into Ontario to bring the kind of income that we need to be able to sustain any kind of increase the way that you're being talked about. All of you received from us an email, and on there there's a link. That goes too fast. We actually contacted our accountant so that you guys all could take a look at the real figures. Bottom line, after 3 years of the minimum wage increase, our payroll will increase 62%. Payroll should be under 30% of your gross, 62%. That would cause our company to have a loss if it were it's not our company that I'm using, but it would cause our company to have a loss of $198,000. That's 6 people.
Thank you. Thanks.
My name is Robert Brady. I'm better known as Burger Bob. I'm the sole representative from Bickford County. My wife and I own the last independent drive-in restaurant in the county. I've been involved with it since its inception in 1960. At that time, a hamburger cost 19 cents. Today, the very same hamburger, same size, is $2.39. We've had over 975 employees. Some of those are dentists, lawyers, circuit court judges, and otherwise. 1996, we voted in a price increase by changing the minimum wage from $4.75 to $6.50 an hour. I immediately raised prices, took 30 hours away from my employees and went on the floor. I've been there ever since. People complain about working 4 or 5 years at minimum wage. I've been doing it for 20 years, 40 years actually. Minimum wage, even though I'm the business owner, have a college degree and otherwise. 46% was mentioned as an increase. Our economy doesn't increase at 46%. I took the numbers given us for $13.50 an hour, $4.25 for a week, and $603 a week increase for me, $30,000 a year. If that's going to be the proper percentage of my gross sales, I have to increase my sales in 1 year by $152,000 in Baker County. I want you to tell me how I'm going to do that. 16,000 entire county, not 100,000, not a million. I have about 8,000 customer potential base to work with. They have to come back again and again and again. One last thing, this is a very socialistic approach to trading and giving money for money, giving it to another. I don't want to work. A leader of my church said we're supposed to re-enthrone the work that don't even work ethic in our lives. That was in 1927. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amalesio Lopez. I was born and raised in Mexico, as you can notice. I got to this country when I was 14 years old, looking for a better life. Luckily, I found one, and that was a minimum wage. And I did something with my life, all on minimum wage. Now, luckily, they going head to faces. I'm working in the other face. I'm against this race for reasons. I employ 60 people right now. I get 60 employees, and I like to keep them. I got employees there with me for the last 25 years. I believe, this is my belief, if this race come up to us, they're going to destroy a way of life. I need to start looking for, not only me, a lot of us, shortcuts, maybe even later some of our old people that we have for the last 25 years, because we cannot afford it. Times right now, at this point, they're real tough in our part of the state, and hopefully it will get better, but right now, we just cannot afford it. Thank you for your time, and hopefully something will be better.
Chair Demro, General Holdy. For the record, my name is Andrew Hill. Thank you for having me this evening. I too came from Nissa today. I'm born and raised in Nissa. I work in Ontario, excuse me. I'm currently an employee at a small privately owned retailer in Ontario. If the proposed minimum wage hike were to take effect, my employer and several other employers in my county will have no choice but to let us go. And there's no ultimatum that anybody can give that's going to change that for my county. I'm a wounded veteran. I physically cannot do too much anymore. I wear that as a badge of honor. I'm happy that I've served, and I'd do it again if I could. But I physically am not able to go work construction or go work out in the fields. I need to stay in a retail environment. I can't do that if minimum wage is increased. I'm getting fined right now. Mountain County is different than every other place in the state. Please don't forget that Oregon continues east of the Cascades, but please remember that we are different than everybody else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your service. Okay, so next up we have Dr. Rodriguez, Laura Rolando, Julie Roman,
Joy.
and Tim Cowell.
And on deck, Logan Steen, Jacob May, Larry Robb, and John Grindenbach.
Chairs Deborah and Holby, and members of the committee. My name is Laura Rondo, and I am here tonight to testify in support of raising the minimum wage in Oregon. I am one of the thousands of low-wage workers in Oregon that desperately need an increase in the minimum wage to survive. I am 26 years old, and can't afford to go back to college, and I'm struggling to get by working 40 hours a week at 2 different part-time jobs that pay just $9.25 an hour, or is minimum wage. During the week, I work at Cafe Young near Portland State University, and on the weekends, I work at Fire on the Mountain. Combined, I bring home about $1,200 a month, and that money does not last. My rent is $575 a month. I rent a room in a house with 4 other people. I can't afford a car, so I use public transit, which counts for $100 a month. And apparently I make too much to qualify for the Oregon Health Plan, so I currently have no health insurance. And I'm about 4 quarters away from completing my bachelor's degree at PSU. Unfortunately, I have racked up too much debt to go back to school. My hope was to work for a while and save up money to reduce the amount of money I need to borrow. However, I have not been able to get a job paying a living wage, so I'm stuck. One day, I hope to finish my undergraduate degree and complete master's and doctorate degrees and become a clinical psychologist. However, the deck is stacked against me and others of my generation. We can't make enough money to save for college, and we can't afford to go to college without some sort of savings. The legislature can take an important step this session and give thousands of Oregonians a chance. Raise the minimum wage in Oregon to a living wage. Give me an opportunity to save money and go back to college. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
Chairs, committee members, my name is Tim Cowan. Wow, how do you follow this? I don't know. Here's what I'm going to take a look at or talk about. You have my written testimony. I think there's a difference between minimum wage for workers and survival of those on fixed income. I'm concerned with people on fixed income. If raising the minimum wage increases the cost of living, that's going to impact those on fixed income. Those on fixed income struggle with survival. It's a relationship between as you get older and the salary goes down and your ability to invest slows down, stops, and where it needs. We live now about 20 years after retirement. I cannot go back into the environment, work environment, and make enough money to take care of what medical expenses and stuff are. I feel so much compassion for the people that have testified, but I also take a look at the people who are older, they're retired, they can't get work, they get ill, they're in an environment where they can't get any better, and I don't see a lot of difference. So I would just like you to think about or include survival for those on fixed income.
Thank you. Okay, so how do you pronounce your name?
Joy.
Joy.
To the chairs and the committee, thank you for having me tonight. And Tim spoke very eloquently, and it feeds right into what I have to say pretty much, because I'm a home care worker and I take care of seniors and people with disabilities. I have 2 different clients. One is with the state through a brokerage, and the other is a private client. And everybody knows him, and you know I'm going to say his name because he wants me to. But regardless, I've worked for Laddie for 22 years, and I followed him through the state services, the brokerage services, and now into a private agency. I had to take a pay cut when I joined the private agency to keep him, but like I said, I've had him 22 years. I'm not going to leave him in the lurch. Regardless, my reason that I'm here tonight, Oregon Cares has asked me to come and speak to the disparity between my 2 jobs. I get a reasonable salary with the state brokerage, and our basic wage for starting is just turned $14 an hour this month. At the private agency, when I spoke to you in April, I got $9.90 a month. Now they've given me a raise, I get $10.50. It still isn't enough. And I would like to see the disparity stop. I do the same job for both clients. And in Laddie's case, for those who know him, he's in an electric wheelchair, and it's a lot more difficult than it is for the one that I get paid higher to take care of. I would just like to see the disparity stop, and I would like to at least have a fair wage across the board for home care workers, so that no matter whether you work in an agency or you work for the state brokerages or the state system, that you will get paid an equal wage. So the private agency care workers have joined together with the Oregon Cares Coalition, and we're asking for a $15 minimum wage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
now I have Logan Skeen, Jacob May, Larry Robb, and John Reed.
And on deck, Ramon Ramirez, Bertha Del Toro, Jamani Crockett.
Go ahead and introduce yourself there.
Thank you. Chair Colby and Chair Denbrow and the rest of the committee. My name is Logan Skeen. I'm from Nissa, Oregon, like many of these others that have traveled this far today. I'm 26 years old, and I'm a small business owner. Upon graduating from college, I came back to a small town because that's where I grew up and that's what I love. And I farm alongside with my dad, as well as I have a small farm of my own. The reason I came back to a small town is because I like the small town values. But right now, our small town is struggling. It's on the decline. And if this minimum wage is to pass, that's going to continue. I want my kids to be able to go to good schools that have the technology necessary for them to be well educated. But as it stands, our schools are already struggling. We're struggling to get by. If this minimum wage is increased, businesses are going to leave and they're going to move across to Idaho, as we have heard. That's going to cause a discrepancy in the tax income to be able to pay for these new schools and the supplies that are needed. As far as for myself in agriculture, our area is now entering the 4th and in some areas the 5th year of a drought. Much of the ground in our area has had to be left unfarmed. This has been a big detriment to many of the farmers. They've either had to grow a crop that doesn't require as much water or leave the ground unfarmed. This is a loss of income. We've also now faced the sick paid leave and now an increase in minimum wage. On the other side, commodities are decreasing. There's no increase in prices for commodities, so our costs are going up. On a personal level, 20% of our production comes from sweet corn seed. Over a 2-week period, we will pay out over $150,000 for what is called detasseling. We're the only grower in the state of Oregon for this company. The rest are all in Idaho. We are their largest grower. If this increases, we will no longer be profitable. We will either be forced to automate and not do as good of a job to lower our yields, or that production will even go to the state of Idaho, and we will be left without 20% of our income. Thank you.
Chair Colby and Chair Denbrow, thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Jake May. I'm from Nissa, Oregon. I'm 27 years old. I have a wife, 2 children, and we're currently working our way through the ranks of life. Just a little under 10 years ago, I started at minimum wage. And today, I sit in a very unique opportunity where I work with some of our lowest employees, and I work with our owners of the company. And I guess I'm what you would call a boots on the ground guy. I can see the bottom and I can see the top, and I interact with both. And I heard a comment that stuck on my mind tonight was plan to prepare was what we were given as a business. The plan that I will present to the owners of our business in the upcoming years if this wage increase happens is we'll do one of 2 things. Probably the first one, we'll mechanize. Mechanization is not the problem, it's the loss of jobs is the problem. Those are real people in our community. My kids play with their kids. I see them at church, I see them at the grocery store. Their lives that are directly intertwined with mine, that's something that I don't want to have to face, but it's something that I will take back and we will face and we will address that problem. But it's not the solution for Oregon, I don't believe. In my opinion, there's nothing good that will come to Malheur County from this wage increase. I don't know the other side of the state, but I do know our side of the state. I've lived there my entire life, and it is not the right thing. Thank you for your time.
Chair Holby, Chair Denbrow. My name is Larry Robb. I own the Red Apple grocery store in Ontario. I've owned that for about 13 years. We've been in this business, I've been in the business for 50 years, and we enjoy some of the Oregon's great laws, such as the sales tax benefits for our sales, because it helps us against the Idaho constituency. But we struggle greatly with like bottle and can redemption, which costs us $150,000 a year to maintain. And our freight costs, because we're out in the middle of nowhere, costs us another $300,000 annually. Our minimum wage, of course, is $2 higher than it is for our board in the state. which is China, and 1.4 miles east of our location. And those three things combined cost me an annual fee of about $500,000, and compared to what my competitors are a little over a mile away. In the grocery industry, grocery retail across the nation, our net profit is approximately 1.3%. I can tell you in 14, I didn't make 1.3%, and last year was just a little bit over 1.
Sorry,
As an
I'm
independent
not
owner,
sure what you said.
even if we made $12 million a year in sales, these are very catastrophic figures for us to try to deal with. The wage increase of, which is already $72,000 more than I would be paying in Idaho, 1050 would be $123,000 more. And at 1075, I'm at break even with my net profit. It would be catastrophic for us. At $15 an hour, it's 3 times my annual income. So those are real figures because I'm in competition. And when our farmers leave, I lose business. I would probably lose 25 employees. We've already cut back 37 employees in the last 4 years. Part of that due to the raise in wages. Our average hourly pay is 40% higher than it was 4 years ago. And that's because I move my people up when I think they deserve it. We work with them hard. When there's a catastrophic event in the family, I take care of them.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming all the way and giving us your testimony.
Senator Nero, Representative Hall, the chairs. My name is John Breitenbach, and I have the pleasure of running the Ontario Area Chamber of Commerce. We have 358 members currently in that chamber from both sides of the river, Idaho and Oregon. And when this first broke a while back, well, last session, about minimum wage going up, I had businesses starting to call and ask questions about what they should do, and we said, wait and see. Well, so the part I want to talk about tonight, you've already heard my businesses say they're leaving. I've already had one store close, but it's the economic development side. I actually had a call from a gentleman in Utah, Christmas week, who was wanting to come to town and purchase one of our, I believe it was either a hotel or restaurant. It's a hospitality business. I could figure that much out. You know, economic development, they don't want to tell you what it is. And I know of one that's retiring, so I'm putting 2 and 2 together. Well, he called. I told him all about how wonderful Ontario was. Our challenges are good, the bad. And he said thank you, and I was pretty sure that he was going to call our economic development team then right after that. Well, he calls back the next day, and he says to me, John, what is this about Oregon and a $15 minimum wage? I said, you know, I just heard that there's something else on the table besides a $15 minimum wage. Perhaps they're going to separate it by divisions of the state. Portland may have one, Bend may have another, and they may leave us alone or give us a minimal increase. And he said to me, all right, well, when they figure that out at your capital, I will call you back. So I'm asking you here tonight to figure it out at our capital. Do what you have to do, keep it off the ballot, do whatever you have to do, but carve out Malheur County, Baker County, and let us get on with our little bit of what we have of economic development. And that, a big part of that is just business retention. If we start losing businesses in Malheur County just across the river, we're dead. Thank you.
Thank you again for traveling this organ.
Okay, Ramon Ramirez, Bertha Del Toro, and I think we have a translator for her, and Germani Prophet.
On deck, Robert Holmes, Ron Bickmore, John Kirby, Catherine Collins.
Chair Demro, Chair Hogan, and members of the committee, my name is I'm president of the Farm Worker Union, and I have my testimony prepared, but we're here in strong support of increasing the minimum wage to either $13.50 or $15 an hour. But I'm feeling compelled to address some of the issues that the people in opposition, especially from Eastern Oregon, have testified today. The fact of the matter is that in Idaho, and I'm only talking about farm labor, okay, so I'm not talking about retail, I'm not talking about manufacturing, but just farm labor. The minimum wage for farm workers, the majority of farm workers in Idaho is not $7.25 an hour. Idaho is the largest user of guest workers in the United States at this point. next to North Carolina and Washington State. They employ about 10 to 15,000 farm workers. The minimum wage for farm workers is, in that area, is $11.75 an hour. If you factor in the cost of housing and transportation, it's about 15 or 16 hours. So we're not in competition with Idaho. It's the other way around. So minimum wage in Idaho for agriculture workers is a lot higher. So it's a total misrepresentation of fact to come into this building and say that we're in competition with China and Idaho, because it's not true. The same thing accounts for Washington State. Washington State is now becoming a state where they're using a lot of guest workers. And the minimum wage for a guest worker in Washington is $12.69. So I wanted to clear that up. And I'm going to submit testimony and records from the Department of Labor to back up my statement today. That the minimum wage for workers in Idaho is a lot more higher, and I think we need to clear that up. Thank you very much. And the other thing in closing is that California is considering a 15-hour raise, and Washington a 13.50. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, would you please assure us that you will get copies of this at the same? I'd like to see.
Sure. These are records provided by the Department of Labor.
We'll make those.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Presidentes de Denbrough y Olby de los comités. Mi nombre es Berta del Toro, vivo en Portland, Oregón, trabajo en un vivero sembrando y cortando plantas y gano $10.75 la hora. Soy madre soltera y sola tengo que mantener a mi hija de 14 años.
Presidents Denbrough and Holby, members of the committee. My name is Berta del Toro and I live in Portland. I work in a nursery, planting and pruning plants. I earn $10.75 an hour. I am a single mom and I alone have to support my daughter. She's 14 years old.
Ganar tampoco ha afectado profundamente a mi familia. Mi trabajo es por estaciones y no gano lo suficiente para ahorrar para los meses que no tengo trabajo. Con lo que gano apenas alcanzo para cubrir la renta de mi vivienda y lo comparto con otra familia y los gastos básicos mensuales.
Earning so little is deeply affecting my family. My work is seasonal and I do not make enough money to save for the times or the months where I don't have any work. What I make is barely enough to cover the rent, which I share with other families, and whatever basic costs I have to pay during the month.
Lo más que me preocupa es que en unos años, cuando mi hija termine el colegio, no tendré suficiente dinero ahorrado para ayudarla con los costos de su educación y temo que ella tenga experiencia educativa, tiene que trabajar para ayudar con los gastos de la casa.
What worries me most is that in a few years, when my daughter finishes high school, I will not have enough money saved to help her with her education. I am really afraid that she is not going to be able to go through that educational experience because she's going to have to work instead to help with the family expenses.
Por esta razón les pido el aumento del salario mínimo en el 2016. Gracias.
These are the reasons why I ask that you support the minimum wage raise in 2016. Thank you.
Good evening, legislators. My name is Jemani LaShawn. My pronouns are she, her, hers. They, them, theirs are my name. And I'm here from Southern Oregon, down in Ashland. I want to thank you all so much for allowing me to speak to you today on behalf of low-income Oregonians who bear the burden of current minimum wages. Just before me, we heard the concerns of a mother who's concerned about the future of her child when she tries to pursue higher education. So today I want to share with you all my perspective as a second-year college student who is paying for my own education and trying to survive on my own, making $9.25 an hour, with only the capacity to work 10 hours a week. After graduation, my first order of business is to find a job so that I can start paying off my $23,000 of student debt, a number that is sure to double, if not triple, by the time I finish my next 2 years of education with the accruing interest that's put on top of that. With the increased cost of living, people, Oregonians, are having to work several jobs in order to support their families. Younger folks like myself are granted funding in order to be able to afford these degrees that society is declaring that we need in order to succeed. However, we're not being provided with the tools that we need after graduation to survive, succeed, and pay off our debt. And these tools will include a higher minimum wage, especially for women of color like myself, who are most likely have to work these lower income jobs. As Oregonians who look to you for justice and representation, I ask you to support me, my community, a majority of communities that are in support of this higher minimum wage. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.